My name is Leftwing, and the topic of today's discussion is flying low. I'm going to start this off with a disclaimer. I am by no means the best pilot. I barely consider myself a good pilot. I usually only just cost efficient when I fly, maybe getting 3 or 4 infantry or 1 air vehicle kill per flight, sometimes a ground vehicle. There are a lot of other videos out there on the topic of how to be a good pilot. I've watched most of them, and most of them talk about choosing your fights well and not engaging in fights you can't win. However, that can be a problem, because what if you are the one being engaged? There are a few things you can do if another pilot tries to engage you. You can reverse maneuver and fly backwards for a bit, trying to turn the fight on them. You can try to fly evasively, doing barrel rolls and looping to try and make them hit you less and eventually get away. Or you can point your nose gun at the nearest friendly base, hold down your thruster and fly the hell out of there. However, there is a more elegant solution I find, and that is to not get engaged by enemy air in the first place. Normally when you fly, you are looking in the air, scouting for enemy ESFs and liberators you can try and gun down. Then, once you know there are none and there is low risk of engagement, you slow right the hell down and start dropping rockets and lasers on the ground, picking up infantry kills. However, you normally don't check the ground for ESFs, because, well, they are designed to be in the air. Because of this, being able to fly low and choose your fights from a lower down position, where you are less likely to be spotted, is extremely beneficial. I've been able to win quite a few fights with people who should probably have had a better position to kill me, simply because I was flying low and could get the jump on them. So, this video is on something I don't feel is covered enough in flight tutorials, the techniques used when flying low. Another quick disclaimer, flying low is a non-combat technique, and though what I talk about in this video can be effective in combat I recommend being at a higher elevation, and so all of this video is non-combat. I generally aim to be flying no higher than 20 meters above the ground in areas where air-to-air combat is likely, such as near enemy large bases and towers. Obviously, if there are a lot of tanks around, you should break this rule, as friendly tanks obviously have right of way to use the ground, and enemy tanks can kill you pretty much in 1 second flat if you're flying too low and too slowly. On screen at the moment, I'm showing you something I would like to call roll turning. The game's default yawing speed is quite slow, though it is possible to increase. Often, you will find that if you are following roads at 100 to 200 kilometers an hour, that the road turns away faster than you can yaw. In these situations, it is useful to shift your roll away from 0 degrees to somewhere between plus or minus 10 to 50 degrees, and very quickly pitch up a little. The reason I say to do it this way, rather than to roll the opposite way and pitch down, which I would recommend in high elevations flying because pitching down is quicker than up in this game, is because when flying low, pitching down could end up ramming you into the ground, especially when flying that low. Another good technique to bear in mind is quick escalation. There are a couple of ways to achieve this, but the effect is the same. You very quickly go from flying at a low altitude to a much higher one in order to hop over a building that appeared in your path. On screen are some demonstrations of this technique. The first time, when I am going into a Natha biolab over the gate, I used a much more common method of doing this, simply pitching up and rolling a little bit to skim over the top of the building. This technique works well when flying very fast, as you often won't have fast enough reactions to do the other one. Let me run you through it in slow motion. So I start off flying at 5 meters and get within about half a second of the building. My roll is at 0 degrees. I immediately roll against the building so that the belly of my scythe is facing the building. I also begin pitching the second I start rolling. The upshot of this is that I gain elevation up to 14 meters by the end of my roll. I stop the roll at about 50 degrees. The next step is to reverse the roll and throw on your vertical thrusters with the spacebar. I reverse my roll back to 0 degrees, pitch down slightly so I can see if I am over the building yet, which I estimated I should have been, and kick on my vertical thrust. I can clearly see that I have good enough clearance to make it over the building, so now I have to switch directions so I'm going where I want to go. Using a combination of rolling, pitching up, and using my vertical thrust, I carry myself to about a 35-degree roll, making sure to keep the building below me, and to be roll turning over the top of the building to quickly realign myself with the path I was flying along. Once I realign myself, I shift my roll back to 0 degrees and aim down at where I want to be flying. This last bit is important, as it is important to remember that after doing a quick escalation, you need to get back down to a low level. I decide to do this on the path up ahead. I simply fly forward and back in line with the path until I'm back below 10 meters. I decide to follow this up with another quick escalation technique that is useful when you are flying towards trees and you realise you are not going to be able to get past them without braking or hitting them. But like me here, you're going at 200 kilometers an hour and you want to keep up that speed. So I simply pitch and look at the sky between the branches. The hitbox on the scythe is a lot smaller than you might expect with its long arms. However, you can generally comfortably pull off manoeuvres like this where you clip branches, as most of them are just leaf graphics and don't actually have a hitbox. I escalate back to around 30 or 40 meters to angle myself to come back down to the ground. Finally, I show the third way to get over buildings. This one only works at much slower speeds, and it involves anticipating them coming and slam on your vertical thrust to carry you over them. It is very likely when you are flying under the 5 meter mark, which I do a couple of times in this video, that you will clip the ground. The number one mistake I have made and seen other people make when this happens is panic. You immediately start to escalate to far higher than you need to clear the ground out of fear. Twice in this video clip I hit the ground, both times I demonstrate what you should do about it. Nothing at all. The first time I am flying at about 120 km an hour when the collision happens. It slows me down a little, but I don't pull up. I simply make sure my nose gun is pointed in a way that means I am not going to hit anything in the immediate future, following the downhill slope of the land at about -10 degrees pitch. The second time I do this in the video, I am flying much closer to the 200 kph mark. Because of this, when I bump the ground, I know I am likely to hit the ground again, and maybe fatally soon. As it slopes upward in this area, I turn on my vertical thrust to try and get out of the way of the ground. However, I only let it carry me up to around 15 meters, which is much less than I have seen some other people do, out of panic. If you touch the ground and you don't die, think about whether or not the ground is sloping up or down. If it is sloping down, adjust your pitch to follow it and make sure you aren't pointing your nose into the ground. If it is sloping up, try not to panic and only vertical thrust a little bit. Mountain crawling is an incredibly useful technique. In effect, you simply have to go through craggy mountain areas and make sure you hug the ground following each rise and fall. There is no real technique to this other than using your vertical thrust when appropriate and pitching up and down with the land, making sure you roll with the landscape too so you don't clip your wings. Throughout the entire section, the highest I am is 33 meters. Watch the footage a few times and just watch what I do, as mountain crawling is mostly just practice and instinct, and there isn't much I can do to train you how to do it properly. The final thing to bear in mind is that although your hitbox is relatively small, you can still die, so be careful when flying past rocks. That's it for this video. I hope you found the tips on flying low helpful. I recorded this early in the morning in a no combat situation. I will put up some combat flying videos in the future that will hopefully demonstrate these techniques. However, as I said, in combat scenarios you should probably get up in the air so that you don't crash into anything during a reverse manoeuvre, which you should really learn to do if you haven't already. My name is Leftwing, thanks for watching.